Please spread loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Can I please have Abbas come recite Hadith Qissa? Salawat. Allahumma salli ala.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري عن فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله قال سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت دخل علي أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله في بعض الأيام فقال السلام عليك يا فاطمة فقلت عليك السلام قال إني أجد في بدني ضعفا فقلت له أعوذك بالله يا أبتاه من عذف فقال يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به وسرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلعنى كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله اللهم صل على فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن عليه السلام قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أماه فقلت وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي فقال يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء فأقبل الحسن عليه السلام نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أتعزن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء قال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي قد عزمت لك فدخل معه تحت الكساء فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين عليه السلام قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أماه فقلت وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي فقال لي يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء فدنا الحسين عليه السلام نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله أتعزن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي قد عزمت لك فدخل معهما تحت الكساء فأقبل إلى ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب قال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله فقلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي بن عم رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله فقلت نعم حاهما مع ولديك تحت الكساء فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أتعزن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء قال له وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وصي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي قد عزمت لك فدخل علي تحت الكساء ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أتعزن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي قد عزمت لك فدخلت تحت الكساء فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله بطرفي الكساء وومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إني هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي يعلمني ما يعلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو عدوا لمن عاداهم محب لمن أحبهم إنهم مني وأنا منهم واجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويسكن السماوات إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا ملحية ولا قمر منيرا ولا شمس مدية ولا فلك يدور ولا بحر يجري ولا فلك يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكسام. فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا ربي وما تحت الكسام؟ فقال عز وجل أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل يا ربي أتعزن لي أن أحبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد عزمت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله العلي الأعلى يقرأك السلام ويحسك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك بعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا ملحية ولا قمر منيرا ولا شمس مدية ولا فلك يدور ولا بحر يجري ولا فلك يسري إلا لأجلكم محبتكم وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم فهل تعزن لي يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله؟ فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله إنه نعم قد عزمت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لي أبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. فقال علي يا أبي يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أخبرني ما أرجو مثل هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي والذي بعثني بالحق نبي واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما سكن خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا محبين إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم ملائكة واستغفرت لهم إن يتفرقوا. فقال علي إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال النبي الثانية يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبي واصطفاني بالرسالة نجي ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا وفيهم محموم إلا وفرج الله همه ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه ولا تانب حاجات إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة.
Please recite another loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum. As y'all know, we've gathered here for the Barsi Majlis of Sayyida Zehra Batool Jafri, daughter of Sayyid Zamarud Hussain Jafri, also known to many of us as Pinky Auntie. Since the beginning of the Jafri, she has been an integral part, not only in its inception, but also in the upkeep. Not only did she serve the Middletown community as a teacher, she also served the Jafri Islamic Sunday School both as a principal as well as a teacher. Beyond that, she spent all of her years on this life dedicated to not only education, social justice, and children, all in the name of the Mawla. She was not only a bridge builder, but she also sought to give people opportunities in order to help them better their lives. And among all of this, she was fueled both by chai and a ton of laughter. Her contribution to this community is still recognized to this day, and this Majlis is not only an opportunity to send blessings upon her, but to all of those who have passed. Once again, thank you for coming, and also please recite Surah Fatiha as well as three Ikhlas, not only for her but also for the souls who have departed. and those who don't have anything, anyone for them to read. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. I'd like to read a salam, so Bismillah. Aaj rukhsat ho rahi hai tumse Zahra رخصت ہو رہی ہے تم سے زہرا یعنی کیا کہوں دل میں خیال آتے ہیں کیا آج رخصت ہو رہی ہے تم سے زہرا یعنی ہاں مدینے والوں کو تھا میرا رونا ناگوار ہاں مدینے والوں کو تھا میرا رونا ناگوار آج سے گانا ان لوگوں کو شکوایا دشمنوں کو تم نانے دینا میری لاش پر دشمنوں کو تم نانے دینا میری لاش پر پردائے شب میں میری میت اٹھانا یعنی بعد میرے جان کیا ہو حال بچوں کا میرے بعد میرے جان کیا ہو حال بچوں کا میرے ان کو ایذا ہو تو ہوگی مجھ کو ایذا یعنی فاخ کر کے آفتوں سے میں نے پالا ہے انہیں فاخ کر کے آفتوں سے میں نے پالا ہے انہیں
تیری خاطر سے رکھنا یعنی آج رخصت ہو رہی ہے تم سے زہرا یعنی صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد وآلہ. Now I'd like to invite Mehdi and his brother Abbas for salam in Urdu. Please recite a salawat for them. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
اور محمد وال محمد صلوات.
گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ ایک سال گزارا ہے زندان ستم میں دن باقی گزارے گی زینب اسی غم میں مقتل میں ہے اصغر زندہ میں سکینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ ایک سال گزارا ہے زندان ستم میں دن باقی گزارے گی زینب اسی غم میں مقتل میں ہے اصغر زندہ میں سکینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ اے اہل مدینہ تو خاموشی ہی رہنا زینب سے خدا را تو ایک لفظ نہ کہنا جو سانسیں بچی ہیں کھو دے گی حزینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ اے اہل مدینہ تو خاموشی ہی رہنا زینب سے خدا را تو ایک لفظ نہ کہنا جو سانسیں بچی ہیں کھو دے گی حزینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ یہ سوچ کے روتی ہے بیمار ہے صغرا ہر فرد کے بارے میں اب پوچھے گی دکھیا ایسا نہ ہو سن کر مر جائے حزینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ یہ سوچ کے روتی ہے بیمار ہے صغرا ہر فرد کے بارے میں اب پوچھے گی دکھیا ایسا نہ ہو سن کر مر جائے حزینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ.
اور محمد وال محمد صلوات.
Jazakallah. Please spread another loud salawat for them. Allahumma salli ala. Now I'd like to invite Zishan Heather to recite his salam as well. Please welcome him with another loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala.
تیری زہرا پہ مصیبت کی گھڑی ہے، ہائے بابا تیری زہرا پہ مصیبت کی گھڑی ہے، کیسے دروازہ ہٹاؤں، کیسے محسن کو بچاؤں، سانس سینے میں رکی ہے، تیری زہرا پہ مصیبت کی گھڑی ہے، ہاتھ میں جس کے میرا ہاتھ دیا تھا تم نے، کہہ کے من کن تو جسے مولا کہا تھا تم نے، میں نے ہر موڑ پہ بابا ساتھ اس کا ہے نبھایا، ہاں میرا جرم یہی ہے، تیری زہرا پہ مصیبت کی گھڑی ہے، تیری امت نے بنا دی ہے یہ حالت بابا، کوئی پسلی بھی نہیں میری سلامت بابا، سانس لیتی ہوں میں جس دم رکنے لگتا ہے میرا دم، صرف مرنے کی کمی ہے، تیری زہرا پہ مصیبت کی گھڑی ہے، کبھی دربار میں پیشی کو بلاتے ہیں ہمیں، کبھی دروازے پہ آ کے ستاتے ہیں ہمیں، میرے یہ پھول سے بچے پوچھتی ہے یہی مجھ سے، کیا خطا ہم سے ہوئی ہے، تیری زہرا پہ مصیبت کی گھڑی ہے، شرم آتی ہے بھلا تم کو بتاؤں کیسے، یہ تماچوں کے نشان تم کو دکھاؤں کیسے، تم نہ پہچان سکو گے دیکھ کر مجھ کو کہو گے کیا میری زہرا یہی ہے؟ تیری زہرا پہ مصیبت کی گھڑی ہے. صلوات پڑھی محمد. Please recite another lot salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now I would like to invite Atif Raza to also recite a salam. Please welcome him with another loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala.
نوجوان لاش ہے ضعیفی ہے میری نظروں سے دیکھ منظر کو کیسے ہم شیر کو سنبھالوں گا میں سنبھالے ہوئے ہوں اکبر کو تیرا احسان ہوگا یہ مجھ پر لیلا سنبھال زینب کو اس کے سینے سے لے کے نام علی میں نے برچھی ابھی نکالی ہے امتحان دے چکی میری غربت اب تیری بے بسی کی باری ہے تو بھی اس وقت یا علی کہہ کر لیلا سنبھال زینب کو دو نگینے تھے اس کی جھولی میں دونوں اکبر پہ کر دیے صدقہ صبر ایسا کہ اپنے بیٹوں پر میں نے روتے سے نہیں دیکھا ہے مگر اب یہ لاشائے اکبر لیلا سنبھال زینب کو روک رکھا ہے اپنے اشکوں کو سب سے چپ چپ کے آہیں بھرتی ہیں میں سمجھتا ہوں مادر اکبر تیری ممتا پہ جو گزرتی ہے رکھ کے اپنے کلیجے پر پتھر لیلا سنبھال زینب کو لا رہا ہوں میں لاشائے اکبر لیلا سنبھال زینب کو
now invite Talib uncle to recite another salam. Please welcome him with another loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
صلوات محمد وآل محمد. پہلو بھی شکستہ ہے تربت بھی شکستہ ہے، پہلو بھی شکستہ ہے تربت بھی شکستہ ہے. کیا حال یہ امت نے زہرا کا بنایا ہے، پہلو بھی شکستہ ہے تربت بھی شکستہ ہے. خاتون کوئی غم سے یوں چور نہیں دیکھی، ایسی کوئی دنیا میں مستور نہیں دیکھی. 18 برس میں ہی لگتی جو ضعیفہ ہے، پہلو بھی شکستہ ہے. دربار میں ظالم نے کی ایسی پذیرائی، کس طرح سے تو بی بی پھر لوٹ کے گھر آئی. بالوں کی سفیدی نے سب حال سنایا ہے، پہلو بھی شکستہ ہے تربت بھی شکستہ ہے. دو ایسے جنازے ہیں تاریکی میں جو اٹھے، بس گھر کے ہی لوگوں نے دونوں کو دیے کھاندے. ایک فاطمہ زہرا ہے، ایک بالی سکینہ ہے، پہلو بھی شکستہ ہے تربت بھی شکستہ ہے. کیا حال یہ امت نے زہرا کا بنایا ہے، پہلو بھی شکستہ ہے. صلوات محمد وآل محمد.
Jazakallah. Please start another last salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I'd like to invite Brother Taman Jafri to also recite a salam. Please recite another loud salawat for him. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
صلوات بر محمد وآل محمد. صلی اللہ محمد وآل محمد. I have some salam to base in front of you, but before I do that, I'd just like to take a few minutes to thank you all for being here. It's been 10 years that Zehra is not among us, and she's been a part of this community. And you all give her a lot of love, and she tried to, you know, serve the community and Ahl Bayt alayhim at-Tathar with all her heart. And it's just she was taken just way too early from us. She was hardly 48 years old when she left us. But she had a very good life, and I'm lucky to have her as my wife for so many years. And she has given me two beautiful daughters, and they are part of this community, and mashallah, they're doing well, as you all can vouch to that. First of all, you know, again, I'd like to thank you all for being here. I thank Sheikh also for being here, taking time from his busy schedule. I have a very small offering here. There's a salam. It's in Urdu, Sheikh. I'm not sure how much you would understand it, but most of our community here understand Urdu. موت کی آغوش میں جب تھک کے سو جاتی ہے ماں، موت کی آغوش میں جب تھک کے سو جاتی ہے ماں، جب کہیں جا کر کے تھوڑا سا سکون پاتی ہے ماں، موت کی آغوش فکر میں بچوں کے کچھ اس طرح گھل جاتی ہے ماں، فکر میں بچوں کے کچھ اس طرح گھل جاتی ہے ماں، نوجوان ہوتے ہوئے بوڑھی نظر آتی ہے ماں، مانگتی ہے کچھ نہیں اپنے لیے اللہ سے، مانگتی ہے کچھ نہیں اپنے لیے اللہ سے، اپنے بچوں کے لیے دامن کو پھیلاتی ہے ماں، روح کے رشتوں کی یہ گہرائیاں تو دیکھیے، روح کے رشتوں کی یہ گہرائیاں تو دیکھیے، چوٹ لگتی ہے ہمیں کو اور چلاتی ہے ماں، پیار کہتے ہیں کسے اور مامتا کیا چیز ہے، پیار کہتے ہیں کسے اور مامتا کیا چیز ہے، کوئی ان بچوں سے پوچھے جن کی مر جاتی ہے ماں، چاہے ہم خوشیوں میں ماں کو بھول جائیں دوستو، چاہے ہم خوشیوں میں ماں کو بھول جائیں دوستو، جب مصیبت سر پہ آتی ہے تو یاد آتی ہے ماں، موت کی آغوش میں جب تھک کے سو جاتی ہے ماں، جب کہیں جا کر کے تھوڑا سا سکون پاتی ہے ماں۔ صلوات بھیجیں محمد و آل محمد کے نام پر۔ صلی اللہ محمد
Jazakallah. And now I'd like to invite Samal uncle to recite Marsiya. Please try to another loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
ایک سورہ فاتحہ پڑھ دیں پہلے زہرا بطول جعفری بنت زمر حسین جعفری کے لیے۔ We don't believe there's almost 10 years today for the Zehra Babi gone, and look like it's happened a couple of years ago. Allah bless her. Fatiha. Just for a couple minutes and then we should be جب خلق سے وقت سفر فاطمہ آیا، جب خلق سے وقت سفر فاطمہ آیا، تب زینب و شبیر کو پاس اپنے بلایا، روئی بہت بیٹوں کو چھاتی سے لگایا، زینب کے دیا ہاتھ میں ہاتھ اور یہ سنایا، زینب کے دیا ہاتھ میں ہاتھ اور یہ سنایا، اے زینب بے کس میری دولت سے خبردار، محبوب الہی کی امانت سے خبردار، محبوب الہی کی امانت سے خبردار، بیٹی سے زہرا نے بڑے دکھ سے ہے پالا، یہ روح میرے جسم کی ہے گیسوں والا، سمجھی سے آنکھوں کی ضیا گھر کا اجالا، ارے حجرے سے کبھی گرم ہوا میں نہ نکالا، حجرے سے کبھی گرم ہوا میں نہ نکالا، سوئی ہوں تو پہلے اسے چھاتی پہ سلا کر، ارے چکی بھی جو پیسی ہے تو گودی میں لٹا کر، چکی بھی جو پیسی ہے تو گودی میں لٹا کر، اے لاڈلی लाल का दुश्मन है ज़माना और शब्बीर को मेरी नजरे बस से बचाना तकलीफ भी सह लीजियो ईज़ा भी उठाना सदके गई मादर की वसीयत ना भूला सदके गई मादर की वसीयत ना भूला हर रंज में इस भाई के काम आई ओ ज़ैना जाए ये जिधर साथ चली जाए ओ ज़ैना जाए ये जिधर साथ चली जाए ओ ज़ैना जब खुल्क से वक्त सफरे फातिमा आया
Jazakallah. Please recite another loud salawat for them. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now before I invite Dr. Sheikh Faiyaz Jaffer to recite, I figured I'd give some background on him. He is not only the research scholar at the Islamic Center of New York University, he's also the associate chaplain for the Center of Global and Spiritual Life at NYU. He holds a doctorate education from NYU with a focus on identity development of Shia youth in the United States. He is an incredibly well sought out Maulana, having recited in multiple academic institutions and Imam Bargas all across not only North America, but also Europe, Asia, and East Africa. Pursuing the classical course of Islamic education, he had studied in the seminary of Karbala, Iraq, one of the most prominent centers for Islamic learning. With that being said, I'd like to invite Dr. Sheikh Faiyaz Jaffer to recite. Please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا والشفيع نفوسنا حبيب إله العالمين ولا حبيب إلا هو وأهله الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المذلومين المنتجبين. قال الله العظيم في محكم كتابه الكريم وقوله الحق والأصدق القائلين أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أفحسبتم أنما خلقناكم أبثا وأنكم إلينا لا ترجعون آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم والصلوات على محمد. Without doubt, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has created us for a purpose and not in vain. We have a temporal period in this transient world of the dunya, but undoubtedly there's an objective and a goal that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created for us to reach. As He recites, or as we recite in this Holy Quran, in this verse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, أَفَحَسِبْتُمْ أَنَّمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَبَثًا. Do you believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you with no purpose? For so many people, though we recognize the reality of our own existence, and we submit to the fact that we have this incredible potential, for whatever reason, one or another, we get caught up in the mix of this dunya. And we forget the big picture. We forget the potential that we have. We forget that there's a world and that there's a life beyond this one. And the only thing that we see is this dunya. In the Arabic language, the word dunya comes from the root word dana, which means something close or something low. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to this word dozens of times within the whole Quran, consistently speaking to its ills. In other words, to demonstrate to us, no, this world essentially is not bad, but it's only a stepping stone toward something far greater. And we have to see the big picture and not get caught up in the moment in and of itself. I sit with young people every single day on a college campus, and the only thing that they could think about is today. And they don't see the big picture of the effort if they put in today, what's going to happen tomorrow. But the few that do, if we rewind back our lives and we are struggling in any given class, or we're struggling to save money, or we're struggling in any relationship, or whatever it might be, if we're only zeroed in on the moment, it's hard to see 5 or 10 years down the road. So we need to take a bird's eye view and say, wait a minute, I don't only live for this moment, nor do I only live for this world, but rather Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created me for a world beyond this one. We know that famous hadith in which the Messenger of God sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala is in the company of a group of his companions, and he states, I am amazed at the one who builds a home on a bridge. To which they say, O Messenger of God, and who builds a home on a bridge? And he states that this world is a bridge between your creation and the next. At the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created us and He placed us in the womb of our mothers. And we went through various phases until we were born into this world. And we go through the various ups and downs and the experience of this life, such that not that we die and that we're lowered into a grave and that's it, but rather that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises us. And inshallah, He places us in a paradise in the company of the Prophet and his family. And we live in that paradise in eternal life. But it's important for us to recognize that what we do here, like we know, is that means to get to that ultimate end. أَفَحَسِبْتُمْ أَنَّمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَبَثًا. Do you believe truly, God asks, that we have created you in this world without any purpose? And that we have created you to not return to us? No. That return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is key. And it's something beautiful. And it's hard for us when we lose a loved one, like we lost a mother, a wife, a sister in our community. It's hard for us due to the pain that we're experiencing. But like we know that that individual who is transversed from this dunya into the akhirah, we call them marhum or marhuma. Someone who's covered and enveloped in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And through the seed that they sow in this dunya, they have the opportunity to make an impact on our lives in this world, but undoubtedly for their benefit in the world beyond this one. And for today's discussion, insha'Allah ta'ala, as I was asked to speak about by family members, I wanted to reflect upon a hadith from Imam Ali alayhi salatu wa salam, in which he tells us how we can leave a legacy behind in this world. Many of us have heard this hadith numerous times, but undoubtedly it is the best piece of advice that truly, if we internalize it, it can be the methodology by which we attain success in this world and the next. The Imam alayhi salam states, as narrated in Nahj al-Balagha of Sharif al-Radhi, as well as many other early hadith texts, he states, خَالِتُ النَّاسِ مُخَالَتَةً إِن مِتُّم مَّعَهَا بَكَوْا عَلَيْكُمْ وَإِن إِشْتُمْ حَنُّوا إِلَيْكُمْ. The Imam alayhi salam, he states, live amongst people in such a way, khalitun nas. Or a better translation, or a more precise translation, mix with people in such a way. Khalitun nasi mukhalatatan in mittum ma'aha bakaw alaykum. That if you were to die in their company, they would weep over you. Wa in ishtum hannu ilaykum. And while you're alive, they crave and they desire to be in your company. So let's go ahead and take a look at this particular hadith of the Imam alayhi salam in its three various dimensions. The first dimension, the Imam alayhi salam, he states, khalitun nas, live with people, mix with people, engage with other people. In the Arabic language, the word khalitu comes from the root word khalata, which literally means to mix. In the same way that you would gather together a bunch of ingredients and a bunch of vegetables in order to make a salad, for instance, you would perform what is known as takhlid. You would mix all of them together in a bowl in order to get this wonderful salad of yours. The Imam alayhi salam is stating khalitun nas, mixed with people in that way. Look, navigating people and relationships is amongst the most challenging things that we have to do in this world. It might be a lot easier. One lady, she came to me yesterday and she said that I was reading about the life and the legacy of Maryam alayhi salam, the mother of Jesus, salamullah alayhi wa alayha. And she told me that when I was reading about the life and the hadith that talk about Maryam, salamullah alayha, I realized that she had exerted her entire life in obedience and worship in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I said, yeah, that's true. And she said that I'm so fed up with people, I'm ready to leave my life and just go and worship God all day and all night. She says, is this permissible for me? I said, no, it's permissible for Maryam. Unfortunately, it's not permissible for us. Because the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, as taught to us, states no. Though it might be easy to go and live on a mountain and worship God and disconnect from people, that's not the religion and that's not the practice as taught to us by our Prophet. We are required, we are obligated to deal with people and to interact with people and to fulfill our responsibilities to those around us. Even be it by leaving the mustahabbat and those practices which are not obligatory within our tradition. On that day, the Imam alayhi salam, he was performing some mustahab prayers, some sunnah nawafil prayers, while he was in the Baytul Mal in Kufa, salamullah ala Amir al-Mu'mineen. And as the famous report states by that lady who came to him with the complaint, that she says that I knocked on the door of the office of Ali alayhi salam, and I began to push the door open, and the creaking of the sound, the Imam alayhi salam, I saw him speed up his prayers just so that he would be at my service. Because serving others in the eyes of Ali alayhi salam is prayers to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the example of the Messenger of God, we would see that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi, one day there was this Bedouin man who came to him from the outskirts of the holy city of Medina. And the only thing that he wanted to do was see whether or not this man, Muhammad, was truly a prophet. So it is said that he stood outside of the mosque of the Prophet ﷺ at the time of Isha prayers. And in his mind he said that this Muhammad, the only thing he cares about is power. The only thing he cares about is authority. The only thing he cares about is wealth. The only thing he cares about is himself. So I stood outside of the mosque of the Prophet of God. And I waited for the time of Isha to end. And I saw that people began to leave the masjid. And one by one I would see them, and I would see the Prophet ﷺ see him out. See each and every one of them out. And he would smile at them, and he would look at them, and he would socialize with them. And he wouldn't ever show that he was tired. He wouldn't ever show that he has other obligations or fulfillments that need to take place. And I thought that he just putting on a show, putting on the smile so everyone talks about how great he is, until everyone had left. And there was an elderly woman who had approached him. And she came to the Prophet ﷺ, and I said, now is the moment when Muhammad spurns her. He's going to leave her, and he's going to say, no, I'm too busy to talk to you. But I saw this man stand in front of this woman as this woman would complain. She complained about the loss of her husband. She complained about her financial difficulties. She complained about X and Y and Z. And I saw the Prophet ﷺ stand in front of her and validate her experiences and smile at her and say that we're praying for you and so on and so forth. And at that moment, I knew that by God, that this man Muhammad was the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when the Imam alayhi salam, he states, Khalitun Nas, it requires us to be a man, to be a woman of the people, to spend time with others and to engage them and to fulfill our duties and our responsibilities to them. We have so many, in abundance of hadith, ayat of the Holy Quran that speak to what it means to being an ummah, to being a community, but not any type of community. A community that exemplifies, a community that manifests the best of etiquette, the etiquette of Rasulullah, mercy and compassion and love and patience and generosity. The Imam alayhi salam, he states, Khalitun Nasi mukhalatatan. Mix with people, socialize with people, live with people in such a way. Mukhalatatan in mittum ma'aha bakaw alaykum. The second dimension of the discussion is when the Imam states that if you were to die, that they weep and they grieve over you. Now think about this for just one moment. For just one moment, if I ponder and I reflect, would there be one man, one woman on the face of this earth that would be relieved if I was no longer living in this world? One person that I treated poorly, one person that I spoke to incorrectly, one person that I took away one of their rights. One person. I say this anecdote very often, so if you've heard it from me before, please forgive me, but nonetheless it's super important. During the beginning of the pandemic, there was this one young lady, she came to me, probably 21, 22 years old. And she said to me that, Sheikh, I'm struggling with something. My mother passed away from COVID. Rahmatullah alayha, may Allah have mercy upon her and all of our loved ones who have passed. And I said, it's normal to struggle when your mother passes away. I don't know what that experience is like, but don't worry, it's okay to grieve, it's okay for it to hurt. And she said, no. She said, that's not the problem. She said that when my mother passed away and I heard of the news and I went to the burial and I went back home, I was almost relieved because of how many difficulties and challenges that I had with my mother, that for more than 5 years, the only thing that we spoke to one another about was Salaamu Alaikum, Alaikum Salam. After that, we wouldn't have any conversation because we got into an argument some years ago. So she said, on one hand, I'm almost relieved that my mother has passed away, but on the other side, I feel guilt that I feel this way. It's important that in our life, when we wrong someone, when we make mistakes, to make amends as quickly as possible. Because if someone feels one moment of relief when I depart from this dunya, not only am I not fulfilling this instruction from the Imam alayhi salam of how to live life, just imagine what type of a life we would have led truly if at the very least one person is relieved by the fact that I'm no longer in this dunya. But on the flip side, when we leave behind legacy, when we make an impact in this world, again, not for ourselves, not that our names are remembered, not that someone builds a statue in our way, no, but in a way that pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and pleases the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's what God has intended from us. In mittum bako alaykum, that live in such a way that if you were to die, that they grieve over you. As Ibn Abbas, he would narrate that after the Messenger of God passes away, that the city of Medina was in such darkness, not physical darkness, but in such a way that people were in so much anxiety and so much stress that they just lost the most beloved. And it is stated that whenever someone else would pass away, they would go to them and they would say, condolences upon you for the loss of your loved one. But just do you remember that day in which the Prophet of God died? And no longer would they remember the loss of their own loved one, but they would weep and they would grieve over the loss of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why? Because of, again, the legacy that he leaves behind. Similarly, Asbagh bin Nubata, Asbagh bin Nubata is one of the closest of confidants of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Asbagh bin Nubata was one of those who were with the Imam alayhi salam on the last couple of days of his life in Kufa. And it is stated that on the 20th of Ramadan, we often recite this particular anecdote on the 20th of Ramadan in our manabir, that the Imam alayhi salam, he tells Al-Hasan, he says, "Oh Hassan, tell all of my companions to leave and to go back home for this last night of my life. I want to spend it with my family." He tells all of the companions to leave, and they all leave. And as only the children of Imam Ali alayhi salam are surrounding him on his deathbed, they hear weeping and they hear grieving outside of the house. And Imam Ali alayhi salam, he tells Al-Hasan, he says, "Oh Hassan, go and see who's by the door, weeping really loudly." So he goes out to the front and he sees it's Asbagh bin Nubata standing outside of the house of Ali alayhi salam, overwhelmed with so much emotion. So Imam Al-Hasan, he says, "Oh Asbagh," he says, "is everything okay?" He says, "When you're weeping, when you're grieving, it's hurting our hearts. Our father is still alive with us. He wants to offer us advice. He wants to talk to us. It's difficult. Why don't you go back home?" So Asbagh, he says, "Oh grandson of the Messenger of God, give me one last glance at the face of my master Ali." So he says, "Let me go ask my father." So he goes inside and he tells Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, "Oh, my father Ali, he said that Asbagh, he wants to speak a few more words to you." He says, "No problem." Asbagh, he goes inside. He's overwhelmed with so much emotion. Listen to this. He goes to the Imam alayhi salam and he doesn't even know what to say. He just wanted to look at Ali alayhi salam. So at this moment, Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says, "Ya Asbagh, la tabki, innaha wallahi jannah." He says, "Oh Asbagh, don't cry, because in front of me I see paradise. In front of me I'm going to be joined in the company of my brother, the Messenger of God. What are you worried about? I'm going to a good place." To which Asbagh, he responds with this most beautiful line. He says, "Oh Ali, oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, oh Commander of the Faithful, don't worry, I'm not crying about you. I'm not crying for you. I'm crying for me. What is life like without Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam?" We have to live a life in such a way that we make that sort of impact, that we make that sort of imprint in the hearts of the believers, in the hearts of our family members, such that they consistently remember us. They remember us with the good remembrance that compels them to recite Quran in our name, that compels them to make dua for us in the world beyond this one. That we make that imprint, we leave behind that legacy, we leave behind that charity, that we give back knowledge, that we give our wealth, that we give out of ourselves, and again it makes such an impact in the lives of the members of our community, like I know that the marhuma who we are here to commemorate today undoubtedly did. From the minute that I walked into the center, I went to the restroom, I came, at least 6 people came and told me, "Did you know this sister?" I said, "No, I didn't get a chance to know her, but I know her family." And they said, "No, she was an incredible person. The impact that she made in this community, what she did for what she did for the children, so on and so forth." That is a example of someone who undoubtedly lives a life as taught to us by Ali alayhi salam, "Khalitun nas mukhalatatan in mittum ma'aha bakaw alaykum," that live amongst people in such a way that if you die, that they weep over you. Wa in ishtum hannu ilaykum. And the third part of the hadith of the Imam alayhi salam, it states, "Wa in ishtum hannu ilaykum." And that while you're alive, that people crave and they love to be in your company. Obviously, we all know when we're surrounded by people who sometimes we just rather or prefer for them to not be around us because of the way that they speak, the way that they treat others, the language that they employ on a day-to-day basis. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from being amongst those. But over here, the Imam alayhi salam, he says to be conscious of the fact and to truly be so careful and so vigilant over your actions and so mindful of them in such a way that your words, your interactions, even your facial expressions, someone desires to be in your presence. The example that's often given by scholars of Islamic ethics is that when we're driving down the road, for instance, if we lose sight, if we lose focus for one moment, it undoubtedly has the potential to lead to our detriment and to the detriment of all of those who are driving around us. Similarly, we should be that careful and that mindful of our interactions, of our speech, of the way that we engage others. For one statement, one line, one word, what could it do to damage those around us, particularly those who are closest to us in our family? I was talking to a lady the other day, on Thursday, and she told me that my husband said this one line to me in our first month of marriage, and he said it in anger when we got into a fight. And though he's apologized to me profusely, every day he said he's sorry for uttering these words, whatever they were, she says, I can't remove them from my mind. What should I do? One statement, and this woman, she cannot remove it from her mind. The words that we speak to our spouses, the words that we speak to our children, the words that we speak to our parents, the words that we speak to others, those around us, have that sort of an impact. To be that careful, as the Imam alayhi salam, he states that the tongue, in weight, it's insignificant, but in the crime that it can commit is massive. So to be careful and to be mindful, and again to live that life. And you see this example. One day there was this young man. He was a servant in the house of Imam Ali Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And the Imam alayhi salam was calling him from a distance. He says, Ya walad, oh young man, come. And he didn't respond. He was too busy doing something. Like sometimes when we call our children and they're watching TV or they're playing with the phone, right? They hear it, but they just are not interested in responding. So he calls him again, Ya walad, and the child doesn't respond, or the young man doesn't respond. Then he goes up to him and he taps him on the shoulder and he says, my young brother, he says, do you not hear me calling you? He says, oh grandson of the messenger of God, of course I heard you. He says, why didn't you respond? And this young man, look at his audacity, but he also knows how to get to the heart of the Imam alayhi salam. He says, oh grandson of the messenger of God, I knew that even if you called me 100 times, you are from the sons of the greatest of God's creation. You are the one who is generous, and you are the one who is kind, and you are the one who is merciful, and I know that no matter how many times you call me and I don't respond, you're not going to discipline me anyway. So at this moment, Imam Zain al-Abidin, he faces the Qibla and he raises his hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he says, oh Allah, all thanks and all praise is due to you that you have given me this quality, that even when someone wants to wrong me, they don't feel like I'm going to punish them back. As the Imam, as the Prophet of God sallallahu alaihi wa when he enters into Mecca in order to perform that final conquest, he takes out a banner and he tells Ali alayhi salam to say that Hada yawmul marhama, that no matter what the people of Mecca have done to me, don't worry, today is the day of mercy. Antumul tulaqa, that all of those of you who have wronged me, all of those of you who have abused me for more than a decade, that today you are free. You have nothing to worry about because I am the Prophet of mercy and this is the community of mercy. My friends, when we talk about this legacy that we seek toward living, you go to this line of the Imam alayhi salam and you take these 3 pieces of advice and you etch them into your memory and you think about how much of an impact that you can make in the hearts and in the lives of those around you. The Imam alayhi salam, he states, Khalitun nasi mukhalatatan, in mittum ma'aha bakaw alaykum, wa in ishtum hannu ilaykum. That again, live amongst people in such a way that if you were to die, they weep and they grieve over you. And that if you are to remain alive, then they crave and they desire and they have this intense sort of emotion just to be around you, to be in your company, to hear your word, to see your smile. That's the legacy that we're seeking to live. And that is exactly and precisely what we learn from the best of God's creations, Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and the Imam Zehra. And you see this as an example during their lifetime consistently. But because we are here to grieve and we are here to recollect the loss of a mother, a sister, a wife, an aunt, to so many of you and to all of us, let us go to just a recollection of the tragedy of Al-Hussein alayhi salam. Because though I know that many of us are in a state of grief in remembrance of the legacy of this woman, as the hadith from the Imam alayhi salam tells us, in kunta baki'an ala shay fa'abki ala al-Hussein alayhi salam, that if you're going to weep and that if you're going to grieve over something, then channel your grief toward the tragedy of the son of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. But before I get into the masa'ib, just this one point. The best example of what it means to being in that state and emanating that sense of mercy and justice and patience and generosity is undoubtedly at that moment when Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, he has that conversation with Hur al-Riyahi. The story of redemption, the story of forgiveness, the story of what it means to be someone who gives out more than he takes. That's what it means when we talk about sacrifice. Sacrifice in the story of Karbala is often depicted only to the sacrifice of life. You know how hard it is to forgive someone who's wronged you? You know how hard it is to let something go? It's difficult, it's challenging. But we see Al-Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salam learn from his grandfather, the Messenger of God. Hur al-Riyahi, who came and who performed amongst the greatest crimes in this entire anecdote, which is to intercept the caravan of Al-Hussein and the daughters and the children of Rasulullah Muhammad. And he took them away from water, and he led them toward their thirst and toward their eventual destruction on that day of Ashura. Yet when he comes toward the Imam alayhi salam, what does he say? And in what way does he say it? He states, Ya Aba Abdullah, ana alladhi ja'a bik min at-tariq. He doesn't say, I am Hur al-Riyahi, please forgive me. He comes and he offers himself in humility. And again, if we want to be that person who no one recollects the bad that we did, then sometimes it requires for us to humble ourselves in front of others and undoubtedly humble ourselves in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He states, Ana alladhi ja'a bik. I am the one who took you away from your destination of Kufa. I am the one who is responsible for the orphaning of your children and the widowing of your wives. And he goes on until again in that state he states, Halli min tawbah. Is there any forgiveness for me? Is there any redemption for me, O grandson of the Messenger of God? To which the Imam alayhi salam states, In tubt taballah alayk. He doesn't say this is about me and my emotion and I could never forgive you because of the way that you've wronged me. No. He states if you seek forgiveness, you will find that Allah is the most forgiving. That Allah is there. Allah is present. We have undoubtedly wronged other people. We've undoubtedly slipped. We've undoubtedly made mistakes. But when we turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we find that He is consistently the most forgiving and the most merciful and the most loving and the most caring. And as we are here again to recollect the death and the loss of a loved one, undoubtedly I can again imagine the pain of a family and a community that has lost a mother. But I can tell you what I can imagine to be a little bit more difficult, and that is for a parent to lose a child. And if any of you are parents and you have lost children, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to grant you patience and to continue to have mercy upon all of our marhumeen. Which is why it is stated that one of the daughters of Al-Hussein alayhi salam, that when they returned back to Medina, someone came to her and said, O daughter of Aba Abdullah, what was the most difficult moment on the day of Ashura for your father Aba Abdullah al-Hussein? She said that the most difficult moments in the life of my father were all on that one moment when he loses his son, Ali al-Akbar. At this moment, she says, and what do you mean? She says that that the heart of my father broke on three times on the day of Ashura. She says, what were they? She says the first time that my father's heart was broken was when Ali al-Akbar came toward his father Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and says, Ya abata halli min rukhsa. Oh my father, do you give me permission to go and fight? Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam didn't know what to say. He couldn't tell him no because he knows that this is his responsibility. But he couldn't tell him yes, because how can a parent tell their child, yes, go out and sacrifice your life? So you know what happens? He embraces his son Ali al-Akbar, and it is said that they were so overwhelmed by emotion that they both fall to the ground, and they fall unconscious for a few moments until they wake up. And Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, he just looks at his son Ali al-Akbar, he embraces him and he kisses him and he helps him get on top of the horse. At this moment the lady says, Oh Fatima, tell me, what was that other moment then that broke the heart of your father Aba Abdullah? She says that the second time that the heart of my father Imam al-Hussein was broken was when he heard out the call, Ya Aba alayka minni salam. Oh my father, this is my last salam upon you. What happens? It is said that Ali al-Akbar alayhi salam begins to recite his epic lines of poetry. Ana Ali ibn al-Hussein ibn Ali, nahnu wa baytullah awla bin nabi, أضربكم بالسيف أحمي أن أبي ضرب غلام هاشمي علوي. He goes out, he kills 120 people until it is said that a man from the army of Amr ibn Sa'ad, he takes a spear and he drives it through the chest of Ali al-Akbar. Another man, he comes and he takes a dagger and he strikes it on the head of Ali al-Akbar. At that moment the blood begins to gush, and instead of it and it begins to fall on top of the horse. Instead of the horse riding back toward Imam al-Hussein's camp toward retreat, it enters into the tents of Umar ibn Sa'ad. One man strikes him from the right and another man strikes him from the left, and Ali al-Akbar calls out, Oh my father, is someone there to help me? And at that moment Imam al-Hussein, he rushes toward the middle of the battlefield. You know what happens at this moment? It is said that as Imam al-Hussein was rushing toward the battlefield, Sakina, she comes out of the tent and she says, Oh my father Aba Abdullah, you're riding to the left side of the battlefield when my brother Akbar is on the right side. You know what Imam al-Hussein says? He states, La talumini hada bunayya Ali. Then how can you blame me? This is my son Ali. Until finally he reaches the body of his son. Can you imagine the scene, my friends? You ever heard really bad news and you don't know how to bear it? It is said that when someone experiences or hears really bad news, they can't even feel their bodily sensation. Hamid ibn Muslim, he says that I saw Hussein alayhi salam as he looked at the decapitated body of his son Ali al-Akbar, and he tried to alight from the horse, but he couldn't feel his legs, so he was struggling. So he had to push himself off of the horse, and he lands on the chest of his son Ali al-Akbar, and he places his head on top of his lap, and he utters these words which break the heart. He states, Ya bunayya inna dunya ba'daka al-afa. He states, Oh my son, after this world is no longer worth living because of what I've had to experience. Ala la'natullah ala al-qawm al-zalimin, inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the tears in our eyes and grief in our hearts, to allow for us to live a life that resembles the life of Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us a death that resembles the death of Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, and to never separate us from Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us the ability to leave behind a legacy. In the same way that the Imam alayhi salam says that leave a legacy and mix with people in such a way that if you were to die, they weep over you, and that when you're alive, they crave to be in your company. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy upon Marhuma Sayyida Zahra Batool Jafri, and to grant us the best of company next to Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow for us and to our family members to be in her company in the world beyond this one. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us all and to grant the family continued patience. If I can ask you all to please recite one Surah Al-Mubarakat Al-Fatiha for Marhuma Sayyida Zahra Batool Jafri bin Sayyid Zamarrud Hussein Jafri, and all the marhumeen of the Jafri family and all of our marhumeen. رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة. بسم الله.
Can I invite Mehdi for Ziyarah?
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك خديجة الكبرى، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك حسن مجتبى، السلام عليك يا حسين سيد الشهداء، السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين، السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس، السلام عليك يا زينب كبرى شريكة الحسين، السلام عليك علي زين العابدين، السلام عليك محمد باكر، السلام عليك يا جعفر الصادق، السلام عليك موسى قاسم، السلام عليك علي رضا، السلام عليك محمد تقي، السلام عليك يا علي نكي، السلام عليك حسن العسكري، السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان، السلام عليك خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك شريك القرآن، السلام عليك مهزر الإيمان، السلام عليك إمام الإنس والجان، السلام عليك إمام زمان هذا أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسحل الله مخرجك وزهورك، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.